Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today we're checking out the black-green self-mill deck, which is the latest iteration of this archetype. We've tried versions with blue before, but now with the addition of Final Fantasy, I'm back on the black-green build for added consistency. Final Fantasy adds Town Greeter to the deck, a Satyr Wayfinder-like creature, a 1/1 that mills 4 cards when it enters, can put a land from among them into our hand, and if it happens to be a town, we also gain 2 life, and we do indeed have a town in this deck with Starting Town, which will be untapped during the first 3 turns of the game, so quite similar to a fast land, and then later it kind of functions like a pain land, making colorless mana or colored mana at the cost of 1 life. And then a diamond weapon from Final Fantasy gives us another powerful curve topper that we can often cast for just a double green, as it gets a 1 mana discount for each permanent card in our graveyard, so lands are also permanents, so those also contribute towards it, and then an 8/8 with a reach that prevents all combat damage that would be dealt to it. This deck has a bunch more curve toppers that we're trying to discount. The Huskburster Swarm gets a discount for each creature card we own in exile and in our graveyard, and then a 6/6 with Menace and Death Touch. Hollow Marauder only tracks creature cards in our graveyard, and then a 4/2 flyer that can make the opponent discard a card, potentially drawing us an extra card in the process. And we also have removal that we can maybe cast for just a single black if we have 4 or more creature cards in our graveyard, then we get to exile target creature or planeswalker. And all of these cards, even if we cast them for 1 or 2 mana, will still trigger our Up the Beanstalk as a very powerful card draw engine in this archetype. Now I will note, there is a non-zero chance that Up the Beanstalk gets banned in the upcoming ban announcement at the end of the month, so we'll note that just in case you were thinking about crafting the deck, maybe wait another week and see what the ban announcement brings to the table. Then Overlord of the Balemerc, another excellent card to synergize with your Up the Beanstalk. Even if you impend it for 2 mana, you still get to draw a card. And then also a great enabler to set up our graveyard, as we get to mill 4 cards, and then we can return a non-avatar creature or planeswalker from our graveyard to our hand. So initially just want to put as many creatures in the graveyard as possible, but then later can start getting back some of our win conditions as well. Then I'm also trying 2 copies of the Carsey Revenant, a 3/3 with Flying Death Touch and a lifelink, and also has the Renew ability, so we can exile it from the graveyard to put a Flying, a Death Touch, and a lifelink counter on a creature we control, so quite efficient, especially with a diamond weapon. If we can make an 8/8 lifelinker, that can be quite good against the various red aggro decks. And then a Souls of the Lost, another threat we can deploy early that will keep growing with every permanent that ends up in our graveyard, so it also tracks lands similar to Diamond Weapon. We do have to sacrifice a permanent or discard a card as an additional cost to cast it, but that's often an advantage, being able to discard a creature to discount our other spells, or maybe sacrifice a random 1/1 that's on the battlefield, especially if it's a Gnawing Vermin, which will maybe shrink down an opposing creature, giving it -1/-1 when it dies, and then when it enters we get to mill 2 cards, so a decent enabler early can be kind of a roadblock for aggro decks. And then I'm also running the full set of Molt Tender, a 1/1 that can tap to mill a card, or we can tap it, exile a card from our graveyard to make 1 mana of any color. Another card you could play instead is the Rubble Belt Maverick, so that's another decent 1-drop for the archetype. I do like Molt Tender, speeding up the deck slightly. Mostly want to be exiling or non-permanent cards, which is just the Overwhelming Remorse, since that will not discount Diamond Weapon or grow Souls of the Lost. Once we no longer have Remorse in the graveyard, then probably want to exile the lands and enchantments first before we start messing with our creatures. And then Haywire Might as a 1-off can also maybe be found by the Overlord, can also be interaction for opposing artifacts and enchantments, gaining us some life in the process. And then Harvester of Misery, another 1-off that can be discarded to give a creature -2/-2, or if we cast it for 5 mana can maybe wipe the entire board, so it can come in handy against go wide strategies. As long as Steel Cutter is still around, can maybe answer a bunch of those tokens, but that's another card that's somewhat likely to get banned in the upcoming announcement. And then all these 1-offs still make sense, of course, because we have the Overlord to find them, even if we happened to mill them earlier in the game. And then the mana base has a lot of black-green dual lands. We mentioned Starting Town, we've got the Verge, Mortuary to Surveil one can also set up our graveyard, and the Blooming Marsh, and then 4 Swamps. Could maybe splash a 3rd color, because we have Starting Town for additional mana fixing, but again with a double green and a lot of black necessary to cast our other curve toppers, once we've got a full graveyard, means that I'm fine with 2 colors and I'm not really missing out on much. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand is lacking a 1 mana play. do have Beanstalk as a card draw engine, and then double Greeter as enablers, which can also hit an extra land. So, might be a little slow against aggro, but even there we have some interaction between Harvester and Remorse. And now, tapped Mortuary, a better turn 1 play. Do we keep Marauder? It is a nice payoff to combine with Beanstalk, so I think I'm okay with it, even though ideally we fill the graveyard as much as possible. Opponent on a Cauldron deck. Alright, so they have Graveyard Hate, which means I could just play a Beanstalk first, on the off chance that they have counters for it, since if I play Greeter, end of turn something's getting exiled. So it's going to be tricky to get some of our payoffs in play now. Now the Huskburster Swarm still counts creatures in exile at least. Opponent discards the Thrill Seeker. Vivi, another good one to exile with a Cauldron. Alright, so this turn we can double spell Town Greeter and Molt Tender. Could have played Greeter first in case we find one of our fast lanes, but wanted to make sure I had green left. Alright, I'll just get a Swamp now. Yeah, I guess most lands in the deck are dual lands, but we do have 4 swamps, I believe. So those would have been unfortunate to mill with a Greeter, because then we might be unable to play the Molt Tender. Fine to chump, add another creature to the graveyard. Opponent might use Cauldron before it's our turn. Alright, could also do some cleanup on aisle 3 here. Harvester deal with Mako, and then Remorse can deal with a Fear, as opposed to playing more threats out ourselves. Opponent does not have the mana up to sacrifice with the Thrill Seeker's ability, so it would be a pretty good window to go for it. Yeah, don't hate it. I guess I could risk it by playing another Town Greeter, and then we're pretty likely to mill more creatures. Yeah, fine to exile maybe a land with a Molt Tender. Although, let's see. Yeah, exiling a card is part of the cost, so it's not like our opponent can respond to that with Cauldron. They could, however, respond to me playing Greeter before I get a chance to cast a Remorse, but we're still pretty likely to mill enough stuff where Remorse can work out. Our opponent exiles Harvester. I guess I could now exile it in response. So we keep maximum permanence in graveyard for Diamond Weapon. And so the Cauldron also doesn't exile the Harvester for what it's worth. Alright, get a Verge, and then Remorse the Fear. Draw of Beanstalk. So that turn worked out. Still have more ways to fill the graveyard. Marauder can draw of Beanstalk. And while Cauldron is effective graveyard hate, it's sometimes a little slow to keep up with all these self-mill effects. They might go for the Revenant here before we get a chance to renew it. And there's Vivi, so that's the scary one with Cauldron. Revenant's gone. And Vivi can make 1 mana, but they don't use it. Alrighty, so step 1 might be Impendent Overlord. And then I can still likely play a cheap Marauder and something else. Since we get to draw off Beanstalk. Find another Marauder, so we want to just mill as many creatures as possible. Do I get anything back? I don't think I necessarily do. I can just play double Marauder if I don't. Although I could mill more with Vermin, I suppose. Although if we get unlucky, I'll regret it. Yeah, I'll just decline. And then I can either play Vermin, need to hit 1 creature in 2 cards, or Greeter. And yeah, then 1 creature is still good enough. And then I can maybe wait to cast the other Overlord. That worked out. And Might is actually what we would like to return. With another Overlord to blow up the Cauldron. I think I still go for double Marauder here. Because the version our opponent's playing is probably not a combo build with Geralf, which can go off out of nowhere. So maybe letting them untap with Vivi for one turn is not the end of the world. And then exile Remorse, since that's not a permanent for Diamond Weapon. Play another Marauder, make you discard again, draw a card. And now we've got a decent board state. And then if they don't exile the Haywire Might, I can maybe get it back next turn. Winter Night Stories. And grows Vivi. And they're maybe tempted to activate Cauldron main phase. And Diamond Weapons exile, so not going for the Might. Play another Mako. And another Winter Night Stories. So then the Mako is gonna pick up +1 counters, which then lets it make mana. Although, never mind, they don't have VV exiled, so yeah. They shouldn't be able to keep going. Although they do get 6 counters from memory, so that's pretty good. But that should be the end of their turn. Alright, so I can go for Cauldron here, hit you for 8 at least, and then I guess we'll see where we're at. Because yeah, we don't want to let them untap with a Thrill Seeker's ability, otherwise they can just burn us to death. So this Haywire Might is of utmost importance. So we get to play it, activate it. And even if they do have another Cauldron in hand, it's going to take a while to set up again. In the meantime, I can impend another Overlord. Could also cast a Revenant. I think those are the main considerations. I think I'm in favor of just casting the Revenant, make another flying threat. So we can maybe present lethal next turn. And then I can also look into casting the Overlord next turn. So hit you for 8. Revenant can also maybe block the Mako. But yeah, another Thrill Seeker from hands could be quite scary. They don't have another one in graveyard at least. So we have 11 in the air, so then if one ground creature can get through, that could be lethal. Although I'm sure they'll find more removal too. Mako 12/12. Now Tersal Light Shatter. Mako grows. And can our opponent afford to attack? Possible they have removal for Marauder, but just a bounce spell for Revenant instead. VV 15 power. Opponent's doing the math to see if they can attack. Yeah, the Eidetic Memory does not mess around. So I have to block VV. Take the rest. And then what can we come up with here? Yeah, ideally I draw another Overwhelming Remorse. There's 2 left in 18. But of course we can't mill it with Overlord and get it back. On the board we have 10 damage. Revenant doesn't add +1 counters, it's only abilities. So I don't think we can present lethal this turn, and there's a good chance we die to a Thrill Seeker in the near future. So maybe we just impend Overlord instead of casting it. And then make a whole bunch of chum blockers. Wow, we drew the Remorse. That's a big deal. Get back. I want to say Marauder. Make you discard again. Maybe draw more action. Swarm for 1 mana is a good one. So start with the Swarm. Still a chance I draw another Remorse here. I should probably just use this now on VV. Could also wait for them to target a creature with the Thrill Seeker, to be fair. So that's kind of the consideration. Although letting them untap with 50 mana may not be the best idea. Yeah, I think I Remorse VV now. But yeah, I'll regret it if Thrill Seeker is one of the cards in hand. Not exactly sure how many copies this list typically plays, if it's like 1 or 2 off. Find another Swarm. So one more shot at maybe finding the last Remorse, which we actually found. Wow. So now I think I'm good to pass. And then we can respond to a potential Thrill Seeker. Don't think they have other instant speed fling effects that I need to worry about. So back up Tersa. And now they don't even have the mana to play and activate a Thrill Seeker. I think I'm good to let them attack, and yeah, our opponent scoops it up. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand. Turn 1, let's just Mortuary, hope to mill a creature. And then turn 2, we can double 1-drop. Opponent's black-white. So ideally we keep permanents in the graveyard with Molt Tender, so we're good to exile Overwhelming Remorse with Molt Tender, so we still get the maximum discount on Diamond Weapon. Opponent's gonna exile something from hand and from graveyard, so that was pretty brutal. So your opponent might be kind of a Catramos control deck here. And cut down takes care of Molt Tender. Alright, found another Diamond Weapon. At least Overwhelming Remorse can be an answer to Catramos, as we can exile it. It's going to be a Slasher instead, also a good target for Remorse. Even though there might be scarier creatures in the future. Surveil, keep Overlords. And then that can hopefully set up our Diamond Weapon as well. Yeah, after seeing the Slasher, I'm not quite so sure what deck our opponent's playing. Could be just a black-white Pixie Demon deck. We'll impend. And then we should have enough of a discount even if I pick up another permanent. And yeah, between the Swarm and the Marauder, maybe we prefer Marauder. Alright, never mind. I guess we were 1 short, so I should have done the math. Can still pass. And then maybe use Harvester on Slasher if we need to shrink it down. So yeah, we could have played Diamond Weapon if we left Marauder in the graveyard. Not sure if that was the preferred option, since we can expect more removal. Right, opponent plays the Bats, which we can just Harvester. So then next turn we can cast both creatures. Vermin happy to block the Slasher. The only reason to maybe keep it in play is if our opponent's running Liliana of the Veil, but our opponent's just gonna cut it down for us. Still gets to have our life total. But now we get to have some very efficient plays, including another Remorse. So Marauder, make you discard. Opponent might have more interaction. Nope, just a lockdown gone. Beanstalk is tempting. Yeah, I think that's worth it, since we can Remorse alongside it. And then pass. Wait and see what our opponent presents. Maybe they've got a Bloodletter that we would rather Remorse compared to the Slasher. Yep. And then I'm happy to trade. Since we have Beanstalk for card advantage. So can maybe start with a diamond weapon, or we could surveil first, then draw, and then take it from there. Alright, another Beanstalk. Just want to find more threats. And there we go. So, play Beanstalk, play Marauder. Another Overlord we can perhaps cast for 5 mana. Although we'd still draw off Beanstalk if we impend it. And yeah, our opponent's just getting buried in card advantage now. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a promising hand. Missing a 1 mana enabler. But we do have Beanstalk into Overlord. And then we're just hoping to mill as many creatures or permanents as possible. Opponent a red-green, and looks like the Delirium deck. So it can also be off to a pretty quick start. Now do I play Town Greeter before doing anything else? Yeah, I could just Beanstalk, next turn Overlord, gives me maybe the best chance of finding another 1 mana play. Although Town Greeter, finding a fast land, lets me play it before it enters tapped. So maybe I'll still start with the Greeter. Alright, and then I can play a Surveil land alongside maybe a Beanstalk next turn. Or we can just maximize filling the graveyard since we have 2 Overlords. Try and get these in play as soon as possible. Because yeah, opponent's not messing around. Discarding 2 cards, is it possible to get Delirium? It's gotta be pretty difficult since even if you discard Artifact Creature and Enchantment Creature, you're not quite there. And I should probably chump while I get the chance. Alright, so if I want to Overlord, I should Surveil after I mill. Otherwise I can Surveil and then maybe draw with the Beanstalk. Yeah, I think we just want to get on the board, and I don't care about drawing cards as much. So we can mill first and then Surveil. And do I want to get anything back? I mean, Harvester can maybe deal with the Wicker Folk if they don't get to Delirium. But I think we just go for maximum discount here. And decline. And Marauder would be another creature for the Swarm. Yeah, I don't think we particularly need a flying creature. So we could be dead here if our opponent gets to Delirium, has the double strike trick, as we see here, Violent Urge. Could also get it back with Tersa. Fear of Missing Out, also quite deadly with double strike if you get the extra attack step. And then Bushwhack should get them to Delirium. So if they have another Violent Urge in hand, we're dead. So this is 11 damage. So we're at 2. Draw another Marauder. So I just need to put up as many blockers as I possibly can. Which I don't think I can play 3 cards here. Or can I? Yeah, I can only make opponents discard cards with a Marauder, can't target myself. Although I could start with a Marauder. And then I guess there's a chance I draw into something else relevant. Seems better than any alternative here. And drew Overlord, not what we needed. So then now, yeah, I can play a Diamond Weapon or a Swarm, but that still leaves us dead on board if our opponent goes for it. I guess I'll save myself the damage from starting town, play the Swarm. And then we can pretend like we have instant speed interaction up. But if Breakout finds another creature, then they don't have a reason to hold back. Curator also pretty good in this matchup as Graveyard Hate. And they had a fear of missing out left as well. So an all-out attack should do it. Alright, GG's. Tried our best, but our opponent had a very nice curve out draw. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. This hand is desperately needing a second land. Yeah, on the play, I don't think we can keep this one, sadly. Otherwise it would have been pretty good with Overlords, drawing off Beanstalk and setting up the Swarm and Remorse. So this is really just one land away from glory. But if we fail within our first draw step, it's probably game over. Alright, this is a bit more balanced. So I can go tapped Mortuary, turn to Greeter, and then maybe Beanstalk set up our Curve Toppers. So I could ditch the Molt Tender, or I could keep Molt Tender to maybe play turn 3 alongside the Beanstalk. But then if I don't draw more Curve Toppers, I might regret it. So it's a close call between Molt Tender and maybe the Swarm. I'll probably keep a second land since it also doesn't discount anything in hand if I were to mill it, unlike the Diamond Weapon. Opponent on the Blue-Red Prowess deck. Alright, did not mill a land this time. But yeah, I guess we added 3 creatures. It's interesting whether or not I play Swamp next turn. Yeah, I think I do block here, even though they might trample with a Monstrous Rage. Enjoy it while you can. Just want to add a creature to the graveyard. And another Greeter is interesting. Yeah, I don't actually hate playing another Greeter, since that likely adds, let's say, 3 more creatures to the graveyard if we jump with it. And then next turn I might be able to go Beanstalk, 1 mana Marauder, 1 mana Swarm. And then Greeter before playing land. Alright, so we can get the fast land. And then I could still play Marauder. But if I jump next turn we can make the play I described. Which I think will be worth it. Small chance they can counter the Beanstalk. Opponent goes for VV. Alright, so Beanstalk. Step 1. If I play Marauder, there's a small chance I can draw into another Overwhelming Remorse to deal with VV right now. Otherwise, could see the benefit of going double Swarm for a larger board presence. And then next turn we can attack their hand with the Marauders. Diamond Weapon is not bad either. So yeah, our deck is starting to rev up. Swarm is a bit harder for the opponent to interact with than just a 2 toughness Marauder. But yeah, opponent untapping with VV has a Monstrous Rage to get it up to 6 power so they can make 6 mana. So depending on what they have in hand, we could be dead. Stock Up's a good one. So 4 mana left over. If they have 1 bounce spell, we're probably dead. Talent can also level up. So I guess in hindsight I could have had an extra Marauder on the battlefield. Opponent's got Planisphere. Of course we're happy to block if they attack. Even though we take some trample damage. Is it lethal trample damage? I guess they're getting close. So we fall to 3. Alright, but I can start attacking their hand now. So I'll Marauder first in case we draw more Marauders or other interaction. There's more interaction. Alright, so I can discard their entire hand now. They can still level up the talent, although now Haywire Might is also an answer. So I'm not hating this turn. Alright, so now the question is, do we Might activate? I guess I play the Might and then keep up Remorse and the Might's activation. And then if they spend the mana leveling it up, I can still respond by blowing up the talent, and then they don't get their card back. And our opponent concedes, awesome! Well, they had quite the turn with Vivi, but yeah, things worked out in the end. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a keepable hand. 2 enablers, 2 payoffs, facing red-white. If this is the Aura deck, we're maybe in for a rough time if we don't find an answer soon, because it can be difficult to outrace the Aura deck, especially if Sheltered by Ghosts is involved. And our deck doesn't have much spot removal. Hardfire attacks. I mean, I'm happy to block. I'm sure they have a Monstrous Rage here, but still gets an extra creature in the graveyard, forces them to use it. And yep, there's Monstrous Rage. Not sure how much longer it's going to be in Standard, so might be their last chance to play with it. Alright, let's greet our opponents. Milled 1 creature, a bunch of lands. For now, I guess Blooming Marsh versus Mortuary is the decision. We have enough untapped lands where I can maybe afford to get a Surveil land. So if I block with a Town Greeter, I still won't be able to play both of them next turn. So I'll take 3. Opponent's got another Monstrous Rage. Take 6. Might is a way to remove the Trample enchantment, but for now playing a Diamond Weapon seems reasonable. If I play the Verge, I don't need to take damage of Starting Town, even though the other Starting Town will now enter tapped. Okay, and then I guess we can attack for 1. If our opponent goes Land Sheltered by Ghosts, we're going to be pretty sad. Although Might can also maybe remove it. So then we do want to keep up that green activation at all times. Opponent's got a Scavenger instead. Alright, so as we've said, Might keep up the activation. So then I can still play Vermin. Maybe if Vermin mills a bunch of creatures, I can play 1 mana Marauder as well. So it would be a 2 mana Marauder, which is not quite good enough. And Overlord I'll keep. Play Might. And then I still gotta play defense with the Diamond Weapon. But at least now if they draw a second land, we don't get destroyed quite as badly. So there's a Sheltered by Ghosts. We'll let that resolve. And then Doesn't really matter whether I destroy it now or let them exile the diamond weapon first. Maybe our opponent actually attacks with the mouse, and then we get to ambush it. Alright. So hit your sheltered. And block. We'll still take 6 from the Heartfire dying. So now I could start with just casting the Marauder, and then Overlord can get back another one. But maybe we'll draw something relevant of the first Marauder. Another Overlord. I guess I could have played a tapped starting town here as well if I'd like. Could also grab a 2-mana Souls of the Lost. Yeah, that works. And then sacrifice Vermin to take out Scavenger. So then, at best, they can play a hasty Challenger and suit it up for 1 mana. But we can still block with the Souls. Gonna be another Heartfire hero. That's scary since we are at 6. And a Feather of Flight. But we should be attacking for lethal here. So an all-out attack should do it. Plus we could have also impended the Overlord, maybe found some more interaction. So yeah, good lucky that our opponent was stuck on 1 land, otherwise we might have gotten run over. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand. Turn 1 Vermin, turn 2 Greeter. Milled a Beanstalk, sadly. Still a permanent for Diamond Weapon. Opponent on blue-red. We drew the land, so now Town Greeters may be less of a priority. Could try the Overlord, but they both mill a bunch. And maybe if we draw Beanstalk in the next turn or 2, we can get an extra card of Impending. We already have a Curved Topper that we can try and ramp out here. And yeah, we milled lots of creatures, so that's good. So next turn I can likely play a 2-drop and a 1-mana Marauder. And I'm not hitting the Souls of the Lost either. So we can play it discarding Town Greeter. Could have also, I guess, sacrificed one. Is that better? Start by attacking either way. Yeah, maybe just sacrificing the one in place, fine. That way next turn I can Town Greeter, maybe find a land and do something else. And blue-red is gonna struggle to deal with the 7/8. They can maybe bounce it. Or if they go wide with a Steel Cutter. But opponent might actually be more of a VV Cauldron deck. So, more combo-oriented. And yeah, Cauldron's also Graveyard Hate, so it can be effective against us. For now, the Mako. So if I had another Souls, I could maybe sack the Vermin to take out the Mako, but they could also maybe discard at instant speed. So, where do we begin now? Overlord can get back Swarm or another Marauder. Harvester to take out the Mako is also an option. Can our opponent discard 2 cards at instant speed here? I doubt it. So then we would be hitting with the Souls, and we maybe present lethal next turn. Yeah, don't hate that idea. Another Souls now. So I could grab that and try to make the play where we sack Vermin to give Mako -1/-1. There's not that many instant speed discard outlets that I can think of. So maybe we prefer an extra threat over just removing the Mako. Does it work? Or maybe they have a bounce spell after all. Alright, that's fine. So, didn't get to hit them this turn, but still have a 12 powered souls in play, which we can maybe grow even further with a town greeter. And yeah, if this is a VV Cauldron deck, they're not going to have all the chump blockers from Steel Cutter, so it's going to be harder for them to keep the souls at bay. This turn, I guess we just play 2 more threats out. So I can first play souls, discarding probably a vermin. And then we get to attack and then play diamond weapon. If they have another bounce spell, I can replay the souls. Alright, let's see if our opponent can win from here. Maybe not impossible. Winter Night Stories, for starters, leaves them mostly tapped out, and that'll do it. So we get to see this black-green self-mill deck in action, and yeah, Standard's in a bit of a weird place right now, which is why I'm not posting as many Standard videos this week, with the upcoming ban announcement potentially changing the entire format, whether or not Steel Cutter gets banned, Monstrous Rage is also a likely candidate, maybe another card from the red decks, and maybe something from the Omniscience decks, and as I mentioned in the introduction, maybe Up the Beanstalk might be one of the targets as well, so then this deck will also have to adapt to that change. But yeah, if Beanstalk remains in the format, then this black-green self-mill deck could be one of the primary candidates to take over the spots that maybe the other meta decks were taking up beforehand, since it seems like a powerful deck with a pretty consistent game plan, as long as you can find those early enablers, and that's where Town Greeter is another amazing addition to the archetype. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.